Picture this. You are barefoot in a moonlit forest, the damp moss pressing cold against your skin as you kneel inside a ring of ancient stones. The air is thick with the scent of crushed fern and wet earth, so heavy you can taste it at the back of your throat. Around you, shadowed figures in cloaks whisper in a language you do not know. Your breath comes in shallow bursts. Each exhale hangs before you in the chilled night air. Far off, a drum beats slowly, deep and deliberate, echoing the thunder of your heart. You cannot move. The priestess's fingers are digging into your wrist. You realize, with sudden terror, that the only way out is forward, into the center of the circle, where a slab of blackened stone glistens as if it has been washed in blood. The clearing blurs as you're pulled forward. The men and women lining the circle are not the kindly healers you learned about in school books. Their eyes shine with something colder, hungrier than reverence. Somewhere in the branches above, an owl screams, a sharp, ragged sound as if warning you to run. But your legs betray you. The priestess's voice rises in chant, joined by the chorus of cloaked figures, each syllable falling like a curse. The firelight dances across their bodies, illuminating blue woad tattoos that spiral over bare skin, down arms, across chests. Every flicker reveals something you wish you had not seen. Masks carved from antlers, ritual blades, polished stones slick with strange oils. Think Druids were gentle guardians of the forest, wise in the ways of herbs and harmless in their ancient rituals? Think again. The truth is far more disturbing. You are not here to learn from them. You are here because you have been chosen for a role that would make modern initiations seem laughably tame. The people who surround you have spent generations perfecting the art of using the human body as a tool, a conduit, and ultimately a sacrifice. Every step of this ceremony is designed to break you down, to strip away your identity until only fear and obedience remain. Here, the boundary between pleasure and pain, devotion and dread, blurs until you cannot tell if you're being blessed or condemned. You feel the roughness of a leather cord as it's fastened around your neck, heavy with the weight of carved talismans, and what you realize, too late, are fragments of bone. The crowd sways closer, the chanting intensifies, and you are enveloped in the heat of their breath, the press of their bodies. Hands slide over your shoulders, your back, leaving streaks of cold clay and warm oil. The ground beneath you feels alive, pulsing in rhythm with the drums, as if the earth itself is demanding your surrender. But here's where it gets truly unnerving. The sexual element is not hidden, not taboo, not shameful. It is the centerpiece. What you don't know is that this union, forced or ecstatic, it hardly matters, has only one purpose. It is not about love or desire. It is about channeling the energy of the living into the jaws of the gods. The eyes of the community are on you, not with compassion, but with a fierce expectation. You are expected to give everything, your body and your will, to feed the cycle that keeps the tribe safe from famine, plague, and war. Roman writers like Julius Caesar describe these rites with thinly veiled horror, but even they could not capture the reality of what it felt like to be inside the circle. Archaeologists have unearthed bodies in the bogs of Britain and Gaul, their flesh preserved, their faces frozen in agony or rapture, sometimes both. The clues left behind in ancient groves, burned timber, broken bones, carved phallic idols, tell a story of a people who saw no contradiction between fertility and death, pleasure and violence. You begin to understand, in this place, at this moment, your fate is entirely out of your hands. You try to find comfort in the rhythm of the drums, in the warmth of the fire, but the mask of the priestess hovers inches from your face, antlers framing her shadowed eyes. She whispers words you cannot translate. Her grip tightens. The circle draws inward. You are the axis around which the world is about to turn, and you have no idea if you will leave this place whole. Your heart hammers as the knife is raised. You are not sure if the next touch will bring pain, pleasure, or oblivion. All you know is that you have crossed the boundary. There is no going back. The ceremony has only just begun. You're on your knees now, slick with sweat, the leather cord biting into your throat as the circle tightens. The air hums with a scent that is almost sweet. Crushed blossoms, mingled with the iron tang of blood not yet spilled. At the center, the altar gleams. Every surface is slick, polished not just by centuries of rain, but by bodies pressed against cold stone in rites that predate memory. Shadows flicker over you as torches are raised, their flames twisting in the wind. You're surrounded by naked figures painted in blue spirals, their bodies both beautiful and terrifying, stripped of clothing, stripped of shame, stripped of anything that might remind you of ordinary life. You don't know who will touch you next. All you know is that the world outside this circle no longer exists. But here's where the horror deepens. The ceremony is not wild, not chaotic, not drunken excess. Every gesture is measured, choreographed, a ritual as precise as any sacrifice at a Roman temple, but infinitely more intimate. You feel hands guiding you, painting your chest with streaks of ash and oil, tracing symbols that burn into your skin. The priestess leans close, whispering words that make your stomach clench. Tonight, the gods will drink through you. Your body is the bridge. Your pleasure is the key. You want to scream, to break the spell, but the chanting rises, pressing you down until resistance feels impossible. You believed, maybe, that sex in the ancient world was simple, a matter of love or power or simple pleasure. What you face now would make modern rites of passage look like harmless theater. The Druidic sexual ritual is not about pleasure. It's about transformation, control, and annihilation. You're not merely a participant. You are a vessel, a currency, a sacrifice in the making. Historical records, Diodorus Siculus, writing in the 1st century BCE, describe great wicker men towering over the groves packed with living victims, sacrificed in flames as the community watched. But what he could not see from the outside was what happened before the burning began. Archaeologists have unearthed bog bodies, men and women, young and old, bearing the signs of ritual death and sometimes sexual violation, broken limbs, twisted necks, evidence of violence layered with symbols of fertility. At the sanctuary of Gournay-sur-Aronde in the north of France, hundreds of human and animal bones lie beneath a layer of offerings, metal torques, phallic idols, tokens of the life force drained from each body. You realize the sexual acts around you are not driven by desire. They are demanded by law, by tradition, by gods who never stop watching. The community does not turn away. They lean in. Mothers grip their daughters' hands. Fathers grip their sons' shoulders. everyone's eyes locked on the ritual center. You are the focus, the scapegoat, the charged object of fear and longing. If you falter, if you fail to surrender, the blame for whatever calamity comes next, drought, blight, war, may fall on you. The priestess does not smile. She marks your forehead with a smear of animal fat and presses her lips to your ear. The offering must know ecstasy. Only then will the gods be satisfied, and so you are pulled deeper. You're pressed against a stranger's body, another chosen trembling, painted in woad. The Druids' chant grows louder, the circle swaying. You're aware of every sensation, each touch, each heartbeat, every humiliating detail. The ritual demands that boundaries collapse. Pleasure and terror, intimacy and agony, all merging in a fevered crescendo. The community does not look away. The more you are exposed, the more they feel their own safety assured. You understand now, this is not about you. It's about them. Your body is the price of peace, the guarantee of spring. But here's where it gets darker still. The blade appears, carved from ancient yew, its edge glinting in the torchlight. The druid holds it aloft, and the chanting stops. Silence drops over the grove, thick as a shroud. You realize in that instant that the sexual ritual was never the end. It was the preparation, the softening, the destruction of will before the final moment. The blade hovers over your skin. Pleasure is the door, the druid intones. Pain is the passage. Blood is the seal. You feel the crowd's anticipation, a collective hunger that has nothing to do with lust. It is the hunger of survival, of ancient terror harnessed for one more year of fertile fields and healthy children. The knife lowers. The priestess's nails dig into your shoulder. You try to breathe, but the world has narrowed to a single bright point, cold and sharp against your skin. This is the moment. You are both the offering and the witness. The ritual has stripped you bare, not just of clothing, but of self. You are nothing now except the conduit, ecstasy and agony, woven together, carrying your community's desperate hopes into the hands of gods who will never answer. Right now, you're feeling the weight of these revelations, sexual energy, weaponized for death, not pleasure. If you want to keep uncovering these hidden mechanisms of power that shaped our ancestors' lives and deaths, subscribe now and ensure you never miss history's most forbidden truths. But you're not finished yet, because the next stage is even more disturbing. The blade is only the beginning. What comes next will reveal just how far human societies will go to keep the harvest, the peace, and the darkness at bay. You wake to the sound of cold rain on stone. The ritual is over, but you are not free. The dawnlight filters through tangled branches overhead, staining everything a bruised gray. Your skin is smeared with clay. Your muscles ache in places you cannot name, and you shiver, not from cold, but from the memory of what was demanded of you. The circle has broken, but the community still watches. You feel their eyes on you in every glance, every sidelong whisper. You are no longer just another villager. You are marked, set apart, and you are not alone. Because in this world, selection is never random. The most beautiful among you, the brightest eyes, the strongest bodies, the smoothest skin, are often chosen first. You have seen it before: a boy with golden hair, a girl with laughter that brightened the darkest hut, plucked from their lives at the peak of youth and led into the groves, never to return the same. You always thought it was a blessing, a sign of divine favor. Now you know the truth. Beauty here is a double-edged sword. It draws admiration, but also attention. The kind that weighs your worth not in character, but in flesh. The priesthood does not choose blindly. Their eyes flicker over every face at the seasonal gatherings, every body on display during festival games. You sense the calculations behind their smiles. Who will please the gods? Whose loss will be most felt? Who can be replaced and who cannot? The answers are never spoken, but you learn to read them in the shifting silence before a name is called. Sometimes families volunteer their own children, convinced that a glorious sacrifice will bring honor, or simply survival, to their bloodline. Sometimes it is those who have broken taboos, violated customs, stepped out of line. But most often, it is those whose allure marks them as both gift and curse. What you don't know is how deep this logic runs. Historical accounts, Julius Caesar's Commentary de Bello Gallico, Tacitus's Annals, describe not just the sacrifices themselves, but the elaborate social machinery behind them. Archaeologists working at Lindos and Gournay-sur-Aronde have found evidence of individuals who were healthy, well-fed, and carefully groomed at the time of death. These were not the outcasts, not the sick or the poor. They were chosen, exalted, and condemned in the same gesture. And so you remember the faces of those who went before you, the way their parents held them a little too tightly at the last festival, the way they avoided looking at the stone circle as if ignoring it would make it disappear. The morning after, their places at the hearth were empty. Their names were whispered only in prayer or at the edges of dreams. You feel the psychological toll in your bones, the terror that makes you flinch at unexpected touches, the shame that flushes your face when elders praise your beauty. You learn to hide yourself, to dull your own light, to pray for invisibility. But even this is not enough. The priesthood has its ways. They see through masks. They know what lies beneath the surface. And they never forget a promising candidate. But here's where it gets worse. The survivors are changed too. The ones who come back from the edge, witnesses, attendants, the ones who were spared at the last moment, carry scars deeper than flesh. The memory of ritual burns in their minds, a fever they cannot sweat out. Some retreat into silence, some into madness. Others become eager helpers, apprenticing themselves to the priesthood, determined to wield power rather than suffer it. The cycle feeds on itself, generation after generation. The community watches but does not intervene. This is the bargain everyone has made. Keep the gods satisfied and life can continue. The horror is normalized. What once would have been unthinkable becomes the way things are. Every parent fears the call. Every child knows the rumors. Every stranger is measured for worth, for beauty, for what they might offer should the need arise. You realize the ritual is not simply about death. It is about obedience, about enforcing a hierarchy that is both social and sacred. By watching you suffer, by participating in your humiliation and submission, the rest of the community learns their place. No one is immune. Even those who survive are in some way sacrificed. The priesthood justifies everything. Their chants are full of law, their stories thick with warnings. The gods demand the best, they say. To refuse is to risk famine, plague, defeat. You sense the terror that underlies their certainty, a terror so old, so deep, it can no longer be named. But the scars are not just psychological. Archaeologists have found the proof. Human remains showing both signs of sexual activity and blunt force trauma. Cuts and bruises that speak of struggles no one remembers out loud. At the base of ancient groves, under layers of sacred earth, lie bones of the most beautiful, the most beloved, laid out not in coffins, but in poses of ecstasy or torment. Everyone a reminder that survival here is built on a foundation of pain. And yet, life goes on. The crops grow, the children play, the old stories are retold around the fire. You look at your own hands stained with ritual clay and wonder if you will ever be clean. The ritual has ended, but the memory lingers. The community has been fed, the gods appeased, for now. But what you don't yet realize is that the cost will never stop rising. The system demands fresh offerings, new sacrifices, a constant reminder that the price of order is paid in flesh and fear. And you, marked remembered, will never truly leave the circle. Not while the grove stands, not while the stories are told, not while the gods remain hungry for beauty, submission, and blood. You stand at the edge of the clearing, knees caked with mud, shivering as the full force of the community's gaze falls on you. In the center, a structure rises, towering, grotesque, unmistakable even at a distance. The Wicker Man. Its limbs woven from branches, its chest already stuffed with straw, animal bones, and the living bodies of the condemned. The fire has not yet been lit, but the smoke of anticipation is everywhere. Wood stacked at the base, oily, with animal fat, ready to roar into flame. You try to focus on the grass under your toes, the bite of wind against your bare arms, anything but the effigy's gaping mouth. But the ritual is not over. Far from it. The priests, faces streaked with ochre and woad, circle the Wicker Man, chanting in a cadence that presses into your skull. They wield bundles of sacred herbs, mistletoe, oak leaves, yarrow, shaking them over the crowd and over the prisoners, blessing and cursing in the same breath. The condemned are stripped naked, their bodies daubed in oils and pigments, symbols scrawled across skin in trembling hands. You realize, sickly, that this is both their final humiliation and their last transformation, from person to offering, from soul to fuel. You are forced forward, compelled by rough hands. The boundary between audience and victim collapses as your feet are pushed into the mud, closer and closer to the woven wall. You see faces you recognize, neighbors, friends, even family, pressed into the cage, their eyes wide with a terror that never quite reaches the surface. The priests force the condemned into sexual acts, not in secret, but before the whole tribe, as if this last ecstasy will sanctify the violence to come. The crowd watches, silent and impassive, their own desires and fears reflected in every tremor and gasp. This is not random cruelty. It is institutionalized, justified, essential. Julius Caesar, in his Commentary de Bello Gallico, wrote with horror about the Celts' great effigies stuffed with humans, set ablaze so that the limbs of living men are consumed by flames. But what he did not witness, and what only the groves themselves remember, is the spectacle that precedes the fire. Archaeological finds at ritual sites in Gaul and Britain reveal burned human and animal bones mixed together, mingled with carved fertility idols and offerings of grain, honey, and blood. Here, pleasure and agony become indistinguishable, and both are offered up to the gods. You're numb with shock, yet every sensation is excruciatingly sharp. The sticky brush of sap on your feet, the stinging slap of a priest's palm against your back, the murmur of prayer that leaks through clenched teeth. The crowd sways as the priests escalate the ritual. Some begin to touch themselves, lost in trance, their eyes rolling back as the condemned are forced to perform, to surrender every last shred of dignity before the flames come. You can smell the oil in the air, the sharpness of singed hair, the sourness of fear. The wicker man's shadow falls over you, a net of woven branches, a cage, a promise. But here's where the system becomes undeniable. Every part of the ritual is choreographed to create terror, submission, and a final, desperate union of sex and violence. The condemned are not allowed a private death. Their bodies are paraded, their cries encouraged, their pain and pleasure fused into a spectacle that will nourish the tribe for another season. The line between victim and volunteer is erased. Once inside the circle, all resistance becomes ritual. All struggle is transmuted into offering. The flames are coming. You hear the priests begin to chant in a new, higher register, summoning the power that will consume both flesh and sin. The wicker man is set alight, fire licking up its legs and belly, smoke pouring out in thick, choking waves. The condemned scream, not just in pain, but in a frenzy of emotion, fear, ecstasy, terror, and the strange relief of oblivion. The crowd leans in, eyes wide, faces lit by the infernal glow, each person desperate to catch a glimpse of the god's satisfaction. You feel the heat on your skin, the blast of fire so intense it dries your tears before they can fall. Your heart pounds in your chest, matching the frantic rhythm of the drums, the keening of the priests, the last wordless shouts from the cage. The spectacle is complete. The tribe stands united in awe and dread, watching as the victims' bodies become smoke, their life force rising on the flames, fusing with the night sky. But as the last screams fade and the bones crackle, you realize the real horror is not in the fire. It's in the silence that follows. The slow dispersal of the crowd, the way mothers turn their faces away, the way children are pulled back from the embers and told to forget what they saw. The ritual is over, but its memory is branded onto your skin, your mind, your lineage. The next day, life will resume. The fields will be sown. The gods will be thanked. But the smoke lingers, and so does the knowledge. In this world, even pleasure is a tool of annihilation, and no one who enters the circle ever leaves unchanged. You stand at the edge of the scorched earth, smoke clinging to your hair and skin. The flames are dying, but the scent of burning wood and flesh still saturates the air. All around you, the tribe stands silent. No one dares speak. You see children clutching their mothers, eyes glazed, old men gripping walking sticks as if to steady themselves against the memory of what they've just witnessed. The wind shifts, carrying embers into the undergrowth, scattering black ash across the clearing like a second silent snowfall. Now comes the final act, the one you never imagined when the ritual began. The priests move among the crowd, collecting tokens, locks of hair, small trinkets, handfuls of soil, each one an offering, a promise to the gods that this horror was not in vain. You watch as the eldest priest stoops to gather the bones left among the ashes, chanting words that have been handed down for centuries. You realize, with a sense of creeping dread, that the sacrifice was never just about the condemned. It was about the survivors. The entire community is cleansed by fire, fear, and the spectacle of suffering. You see the logic now. The ritual was never simply a killing. It was an act of renewal. The agony, the humiliation, the sexualized violence were all part of a cycle meant to assure the tribe's fertility and peace. In offering up their own, the Celts believed they were bargaining with the land itself, buying one more year of crops, health, and safety from enemies beyond the forest's edge. Every drop of blood, every gasp of pleasure or pain, was a contract sealed in flesh and smoke. The priests proclaim the community purified. They sprinkle water drawn from a sacred spring, their words echoing over the blackened ground. But here's where the true horror lies. The ritual is not a secret shame, not a moment of madness. It is the law. Celtic priesthoods maintained intricate codes, passing down these practices as sacred duty. Strabo's geography records the gory customs of Gallic priests and describes how entire villages could be summoned to the groves for the great sacrifice. At Gournay-sur-Aronde, archaeologists have found sacrificial pits layered with both human and animal remains, suggesting that these acts were both systematic and celebrated. You feel the aftershocks in your own body. Your legs are weak, your breath comes in shallow bursts. You remember the priestess's touch, the taste of clay and oil, the heat of the flames. And you realize the greatest violence was not what happened in the cage, but what it did to the crowd, the survivors, you. The act has cleaved your memory in two, before and after the burning. You carry the scar of the ritual in your chest, a knowledge that will never fade. But here's where it gets worse. You sense how quickly the extraordinary becomes ordinary. The children who watched grow up with nightmares, but in time, they will be the ones to gather at the groves, to sing the songs, to mark the next offering. The cycle continues, not because it is loved, but because it is required. Those who survive become the new enforcers. Parents teach their children how to endure, how to look away, how to surrender without breaking. Each new year, the pain becomes a little easier to bear, the screams a little easier to ignore. As the embers cool, the tribe gathers for a feast. Roasted meat and honeyed cakes are shared, wine poured over the earth in thanks. It is both a celebration and a reckoning, a way of washing away the stain, even as it is ground deeper into the soul. The priests tell stories of past rituals, of years when the crops failed and the rivers ran dry. They remind everyone that only through sacrifice, through submission and suffering, can the land remain whole. You realize now that this logic is not unique. Across ancient Europe, at the margins of the Roman world, similar rites were practiced, each culture finding its own way to bind sex, death, and survival together. Legal codes, sacred oaths, and the silent terror of the crowd work together to turn the extraordinary into the expected. What was once unthinkable becomes the backbone of civilization. The last thing you see before leaving the grove is the face of the final victim, half buried in ash, eyes open, lips parted in an expression you cannot name. Somewhere between agony and release, terror and peace. You know now that the sacrifice is never truly finished. The memory will haunt you, shape your dreams, linger in every shadow at the edge of the firelight. But the tribe cannot stop. To refuse the ritual is to risk everything: famine, sickness, war, the wrath of gods who do not forgive weakness. The cost is high, but the alternative is unthinkable. You walk away from the ashes with the others, silent, marked, forever changed. The cycle of cleansing is complete, until the earth demands the blood again. You wake before sunrise, heart pounding with the memory of fire and screams, the sharp tang of smoke still embedded in your hair. The clearing is empty now, except for the scorched skeleton of the wicker man and the faint traces of ash blowing across the trampled grass. Your body aches with exhaustion, but your mind is sharper than ever. Every detail of the ritual is seared into your memory. You move as if in a trance, passing the remnants of torches, charred fragments of bone, the shallow pits where the priests buried what the fire could not consume. You know you will never be the same. This is the price of survival. The ritual is not just an event. It is a wound that binds the tribe together. You feel the eyes of others on you as you return to the village, each gaze a reminder that everyone witnessed, everyone played a part, everyone is implicated. Some avert their eyes as if ashamed. Others look at you with quiet pride or veiled envy, as if you've crossed a threshold they feared to even imagine. You can still hear the priestess's voice in your ear, whispering that what was taken from you now lives on in the land. The crops, the bones of the ancestors. But here is the most shocking revelation. As the sun rises over the blackened grove, you understand that this ritual is not just about death. It is about renewal through horror. You have become the vessel for the tribe's guilt, fear, and hope, a living memory of sacrifice and survival. The ecstasy and agony forced upon you, the stripping away of your will, your dignity, your very self, all of it has become the foundation of the community's peace. The survivors feast and sing and tell stories, but you know those stories are only half true. The other half is what lingers in the silence between songs, in the faces glimpsed in the dark, in the trembling hands of those who will never tell what they saw. You feel the heaviness of history pressing down. Archaeologists will one day unearth these sites, bones intermingled with animal skulls, fragments of jewelry, and ritual knives, the blackened footprints of the wicker man, and try to decipher what happened here. They will speak of ritualized violence, fertility cults, sacral kingship. But you know the truth is rawer, deeper, more personal. The ritual was not a spectacle for scholars, but a test for the soul, a demand that you surrender everything you are to a power beyond comprehension. The aftershocks ripple through the tribe. Some who witness the sacrifice grow quiet, retreating from laughter, haunted by what they've seen. Others grow fierce, clinging to the logic that the ritual was necessary, inevitable. The children who watched from the edges will one day stand where you stood, trembling, uncertain, desperate for the gods' favor or simply for mercy. The cycle persists because no one dares imagine life without it. The community's strength is built on a foundation of submission, fear, and violence, masked as tradition. Yet, as you walk away from the ashes, something in you changes. For the first time, you understand the truth behind the legend. The real horror is not just in the flames, but in the way the ritual is accepted, even cherished. The suffering was not a glitch in the system. It was the system itself. And you realize how easily the extraordinary can become routine, how quickly a community can learn to look away, to justify, to survive by forgetting. But the memory cannot be banished. It lives in you now, a scar and a secret. You look at your hands, stained with ash, and wonder if they will ever be clean. You try to speak, but words fail. All you can do is carry the story forward, even if no one else will listen. You came into this story believing the Druids were mystics, keepers of wisdom, healers in harmony with nature. Now you see the truth. Their rituals were built on the systematic use of sexuality, terror, and death to bind a community together, to hold off disaster for one more year. You realize that what the tribe calls tradition, the rest of the world would call a nightmare. If this journey has changed how you see the ancient world, if you feel the weight of hidden rituals and forbidden truths pressing on your understanding, subscribe now to keep uncovering the realities that history tried to bury. Every story like this is a warning and a revelation. And as long as the ashes of the Wicker Man still blow across forgotten fields, you will know the darkness never really leaves us.